Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Transition Partners Everyone Hates Recruiters vlog. So this is officially our 8th episode, and we have the wonderful George Mill with us today. Morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You okay?
Good. Yes, good, thank you. We've just got a third person with us.
Morning. Hiya.
We're recording, Cayenne, so you're going to be on YouTube. You need to go.
That's exciting. You're going to get more likes than I am on this.
Cayenne's a keen YouTuber, aren't you? So
yeah.
You're going to be on YouTube at some point. You need to go now. Yes, close the door, please. Well, that's going to give everyone a little bit of a laugh. So where were we? Yeah, so today we're going to talk about a few trials, tribulations from internal recruitment. You've obviously gone agency recruitment into internal recruitment. So it'd be really good to talk about some challenges, your experiences, what's worked well for you, what you've implemented, in order to help others to develop their careers as you have done. So just for the viewers and listeners, so George currently works for Hitachi Capital, who have been in the finance industry for over 30 years and providing really strong, robust finance solutions across the world. They've been expanding quite vigorously, which I'm sure we'll hear more about shortly. And George's role is talent acquisition partner within the business. So I shall hand over to you now. If you could start by giving us a little bit of a rundown into your background, where your career started, just kind of a quick overview of your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good overview on Hitachi as well. I'm going to steal some of that. So I'm currently talent acquisition partner at Hitachi Capital. I've actually been in the recruitment industry now for just under 10 years. So I stumbled into recruitment, I think, like a lot of people did, straight from university, and I cut my teeth in exec search headhunting on an international basis. So we specialized in operational excellence and Lean Six Sigma, which was, a really good niche industry to go into, a lot of retained assignments, and a really interesting way to kind of learn about the way recruitment works on a global scale. I did that for a couple of years and then decided to make the move to a bit more of a local recruitment company. So I work for search consultancy, focused purely on Yorkshire, looking after internal recruitment, HR and learning and development professionals. And actually I was there for about 2.5 years. One of my clients asked me to go and work for them directly when I was trying to fill one of their internal recruiter vacancies, to go and work for them and help set up their internal recruitment.
When all these great recruiters get snapped up.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, do you know what? It was too good an opportunity to turn down, and so I joined there along with another colleague from Search, Sarah Speechley. I was there for about 2 years. We set up that function from scratch. So they had previously just relied on agencies. They are a member-run organisation. They spent about £1 million on recruitment the year before, which was just extortionate. So it was everything from policies, processes, systems, build it from the ground up, which was great challenge. Did that for another sort of 2.5 years. You can't see a pattern now, kind of sort of every 2 years change. I moved to Hitachi Capital specifically to look after their IT and tech recruitment on a national basis, which was an area I always wanted to get into. And I've been doing that for almost 2.5 years now. My role's just changed. I've moved over to another business unit, our consumer finance division, which is the largest business unit, and we look after a whole bunch of, sort of retail points of sale and work with the likes of B&Q, DFS and so on. So if you go there and buy a sofa or a kitchen, that's us. That sits behind the finances is with us. So huge amounts of growth, huge amounts of change, and keeping me very busy, to be honest.
Fantastic.
That's me in a snapshot.
Great. So were you part of a team? Do you have a team reporting into you? It'd be good to get a bit more background around that.
Yeah, so we have 5 business units in the UK under Hitachi Capital, and we have 4 talent acquisition partners that look after those, and I have a talent acquisition coordinator that reports directly into me. So my responsibility is solely to look after our consumer finance division, So I suppose we're verticals into the business units, and then we will work together on group-wide projects. We have, I suppose, a talent acquisition manager who is like a centre of excellence for us. So Zara's role is non-operational. It's all around strategic workforce planning, some of the projects, looking at some of the systems we brought in. So she will put the roadmap together. We will then make that a reality in our business units and drive everything from there. But anything that's related to filling roles, agencies, diversity and inclusion and belonging, anything like that that's relevant to our consumer finance division, that all sits with me, essentially. Cool. So I'm the point of contact, and the buck stops with me for all of that.
Yeah, fantastic, brilliant. And just before we started recording this, we were talking about how crazy your life is at the moment. Yes. And I know it's kind of from other people that we're speaking to in the market and the local community. I think that's pretty much across the board. It'd be really interesting to talk about some of the challenges that you're experiencing, but also the trends, because I think a lot of people at the moment are wanting to know, you know, how obviously we've just had this roadmap announced, and it's great to start now, I think, talking about what does the future hold, where are we at now, what trends are we seeing, what challenges are you experiencing, and I think it'd be quite good to talk about that and just tell others, I guess, about how we can manage those and overcome some of those.
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting year, certainly for me. So I actually was on paternity leave when we went into lockdown. So I returned, in inverted commas, back to the office when I didn't actually leave my house. When everyone, I think, was reeling from the announcements of what was going on. I think the good thing with Hitachi Capital is we have been really stable and have actually taken a really measured approach to what's been going on. So in lockdown number one, when a lot of businesses were on a recruitment freeze or had pulled or retracted offers, we didn't do any of that. We moved forward. I think we had 53 offers starting the week I came back. We remotely onboarded. We continued to hire throughout. So between March and December last year, we added over 200 permanent heads across the group, not including best part of 200 temporary staff and contractors as well. So for us, I think we were quite fortunate that we pushed ahead with all our plans, all our programs of work didn't change. We didn't place anyone on furlough. We didn't make any redundancies. We've actually looked at this opportunity to grow, which is great. So I can't complain, too much. I felt like I was very, very busy, but we all know how hard the recruitment industry was hit during that time as well. So I was very fortunate to be in the position I was. I think what was really interesting for us was, although our plans didn't change too much around the types of roles we were looking at, the skills that we look for that certainly needed tweaking. So people that now can remotely work effectively, which is something that we probably didn't look at before. You know, COVID's been a huge catalyst for change. Working flexibly and remote working has actually become the norm now, rather than being a benefit, in inverted commas, for roles. So actually the types of individual we're looking for changed in that respect, but the roles themselves didn't. So for us, it's about being able to understand and access different markets than before, looking at how we can bring people into business on a more flexible basis as well, how that will fit into a different way of working. But I suppose the challenge now for us is how to keep that momentum going. I think we've certainly seen at the start of this year, businesses are making up for lost time. The number of roles and the quality of opportunities out there has increased tenfold since the end of last year, where I think we were able to steal a march on a lot of people previously. We've got candidates that are routinely in the process for 4, 5, 6 roles. I said to you before we came on, I've got a candidate who's got 8 final interviews over 2 weeks, which is, crazy. That's wasn't heard of 6 months ago. So for us, it's now understanding how we can keep momentum going and the challenges we face. And I think, one of the big things for us is, although we're able to look kind of wider net now, people can work from home, they can have that flexibility, you're not confined to your local market area. Your competition for that talent has grown exponentially as well. You're no longer competing in, say, the Leeds market. You're looking further afield from the north,
you're
Scotland,
competing everywhere, aren't you?
Absolutely. We're seeing London are desperately trying to keep hold of their talent. Everyone wants to move out of there at the moment, but they're throwing London-based salaries for people who are based in the north, which is a huge draw for them. So it's about, I suppose, creating a roadmap for us that's sustainable without being silly with that sort of stuff, but understanding where we can access that talent and not being afraid to try and challenge ourselves and try new things, to be honest. So it's going to be an interesting year, definitely.
Certainly is. So as a company, you are hiring remotely, and i.e. hiring candidates that live, say, 100, 200 miles away from where they actually would ordinarily be based.
For some roles, yeah.
For some roles, yeah. So you're going to continue to do so. You're going to continue to do that throughout this year.
Yeah, so I suppose this is where I've got to be careful, because there is an official party line that is yet to be decided, but we all know that we're not going to go back to working full time in the business. That hasn't worked. The engagement, the feedback of actually working remotely has been unbelievable. I think it's fair to say our CEO and our exec didn't realize, I suppose, the impact of that, and have really bought into that. The business is performing fantastically well in the market compared to competitors. Yeah, really fantastic. We achieved record growth and profit again during the middle of the last lockdown, which I think is 11 years in a row now for us. So the bar keeps getting set higher and higher, but I think we've got to be aware that there are some roles that are so niche, we have to look at them on an individual basis, and we're not going to require someone to be in the office all the time. We don't need to, but they may be able to may have to come for a certain number of days per month or per year. There are other days where we'd like people in the office, say potentially 40% of the time. But we will always have some sort of base for people's physical and mental well-being as well.
Cool, fantastic. So what I think what I'd be really interested on that note as well, there's been a lot of talk, and there's been quite a few virtual events around like onboarding remotely, embedding culture remotely, and how do you continue to grow and embed culture. So a lot of organizations last year, if they were hiring, not a lot, but predominantly all companies last year were hiring remotely, and it could continue this year. There's going to get a point where companies are at risk of losing some of that culture that they've worked really hard to grow if they don't get it right remotely. Would you have any tips and advice around that for other companies and internal recruitment teams, to how to continue to embed that? Because I guess is it something that you need to start with at the hiring process and the selection process? Be good to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of the £1 million question floating around in the market at the moment, isn't it? And actually, we're looking at running an event on that as well. I think there's so much really good stuff going on out there, and there's also a lot of issues with this. And I think onboarding last year is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think we can hold up our hands and say we've got a lot more we can do with it, and as a lot of organizations have. But I think the key for us is it's about finding people that add to our culture as a business. I think the term culture fit gets thrown around a lot of the time, and for me that's a bit of an escape for hiring managers to hire people the way they want them to be in their mold or easily controlled or whatever. But for us, if you're going to have people that add to that culture, they've really got to be bought in to you as a business, we find. So we do a lot around charity and corporate social responsibility that resonates a lot with candidates, and we're seeing that more and more for people that mention it. So if we've got people that are bought into that at first stage, even from an initial conversation with someone like myself, already if they've got that buy-in and they can demonstrate the values that we look for as a business as well as a harmony, sincerity and pioneering spirit, you already know to a certain extent that this is the type of individual that can add something to the business, which is great, before you go through then a process such as the interview or anything which will reinforce that. So I think definitely advice for me is to businesses who are looking to this is make sure that what you're looking for is ingrained into the start of the process, whether that's from the language you use in attracting candidates or reaching out to them, all the way through your interview process, and then consistently through the onboarding. If you build that piece, when people land in the business, they've already been drip fed all of that already, so it doesn't come as a shock in terms of that culture. But keeping people connected is very, very difficult at the moment. I think there's a lot of Zoom and Microsoft Teams fatigue out there. People are constantly looking at ways to engage and bring people together, whether that's comedy nights, you know, cocktail making. I saw someone do remote art classes recently. I think, you know, something that someone's mentioned in my network is, you know, have a day off and actually go and see some people in a remote, you know, social distance manner if you can. So, you know, someone that we know, Clive from Skybet and Gaming, he did something fantastic. He rode around all his team on a bike on one of his days off to have a socially distance kind of meeting with him, which I thought was fantastic. And
really
you know,
nice,
have a think about that sort of out of the box ideas that actually works.
Yeah, one thing I've been trying to promote with our guys is, you know, when they're having kind of weekly or monthly catch-ups, why don't you, because obviously you can meet one other person for a socially distanced walk, why don't you, because we're all of us pretty much live in and around Leeds, it's only a short drive to go and meet with them. So, you know, how about doing it on a walk instead of on a Zoom? You know, and
absolutely.
you just feel like you've had some social contact then, don't you? Like,
I know, it's nice, and you're away out of a screen, you get to have a conversation and digest some different bits of information as well. I think you can get stuck. I think that's the key thing as well, is you can get stuck really quickly in a repetitive process or a rut, whether that's around reaching out, onboarding, interviewing, and actually don't be afraid to kind of change things up. If it hasn't worked, you've got data to prove that. Change it, take a risk. If it doesn't work, that's fine. But always look at iteratively trying to change that process. I think that's something that we've realised. You know, our onboarding wasn't perfect at the start. We've looked and taken feedback and continually look to change it. But there'll always be more you can do. But don't be afraid to challenge everything. It's a big piece of advice, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. So, on that note as well, around, I guess, onboarding, and like you mentioned the example of the candidate you've got at final stage interviews, got 8 other final interviews. Obviously, a lot of your role and key part of your role is sourcing and hiring directly. What are there any tips that you would provide around how to get these candidates through the door and secure them, given the current challenges and given all the competition?
Giving away state secrets. Giving away state secrets, Sandra. Do you know what? I think for me, it's been really genuine and being really honest around what you're looking for and being upfront. There's been a lot of, it's really interesting over the last year, a lot of employer brands have cracked and failed, whereas before you'd think of organisations that were probably a bit of a pedestal, the way they may have acted or treated employees or customers actually throughout this time has done irreparable damage. And actually there's a lot more opportunities in the market for businesses that probably haven't been as active or as engaged with some of these areas of the market previously. And I think feedback that we always get, or certainly that I get, is being upfront and honest and having that conversation, understanding it's not necessarily the right time or the right role, goes an awful long way. I think there's a lot of really weird advice in the market. I don't know if you'd have seen, there's a few posts going around LinkedIn around take the available for work sticker off your LinkedIn profile because it makes you look desperate, which I think is a ridiculous statement. You know, why would you not want to advertise the fact that you are looking for a role? You know, if I've got someone that is available and open and ticks the box I'm looking for, of course I'm going to contact them. And I think, you know, for us, see that you can do some good within what you're doing as well. A lot of the times we'll be reaching out and providing advice to people. I've been saying to all my candidates, you may not have used a recruiter before, an agency before, you've been in a role with me redundant after 4 or 5 years. Please use me as a sounding board. Away from opportunities, something that feel right, reach out. I've been working with a couple of candidates on that. They're based down south. They won't work for us, but they've said then that they'll recommend their colleagues and so on to us as a business now, if that's the way we operate. And I think how you portray and how you act goes an awful long way. Don't ever underestimate the power of that referral piece and growing a network. It can do wonders for you in the background.
I 100% agree, coming from a more recent agency background, that I do think that things are turning again, in that we need to spend a lot more time with our candidates and developing relationships with the candidates. And like you say, it might be that, you know, it might be that they don't use you now, or you don't place them anywhere now, but you might in a year or 2 or 3 years, or in a week or 2 weeks or whenever, they might have introduced, you might get a surprise phone call from someone that they've worked with before because
Yeah,
they've had a good
absolutely.
experience from you. And I think that a lot of people have been missing that trick, and you know, but it's not a trick. It's just for me, that's just like everyday kind of, you know, talking to candidates and building relationships and networking.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting, I think, because, you know, obviously from an agency point of view, the market's obviously been very difficult, and I think there's always going to be that balance of trying to bring money in and grow your network at the same time. I think for us on an internal side, you know, we've seen candidates are very much more risk averse. You know, for them to move opportunities, if they're currently in a role at the moment, more factors have to be right, because they're, you know, they've got family at home, or they're going to work remotely, they're going to move to a different discipline, different organization. You know, we're looking at bringing a lot of individuals in that potentially haven't worked in financial services before. So for them, that's a real different shock in terms of regulations, the types of products we offer.
yeah,
And it's about making sure that they have the confidence to do that move. And so for us, I would say we have around, I'd say 30%, 35% more work per vacancy now, based on number of applications we receive, and then the contact that we need to go through with each candidate to make them feel comfortable enough to go to each stage. So we're busier now post-COVID than we ever were before, and everything, which is great, but it does mean that that relationship piece is more key than ever. And then once you start that, once that then leads into your candidate interview and onboarding, if you get all that right, you're off to a winner.
Yeah, 100% agree. I
it's,
think that's this year, the candidate relationship and the strength of the candidate relationship is going to be so much more important than ever. And then, like
absolutely.
you say, the onboarding and remote and management of remote workers, and like you say, it's getting all that right. And
that candidate that's got 8 final interviews, for me, we've had a fairly honest discussion. The roles are fairly similar, the salaries are fairly similar. What it will come down to is where they feel most comfortable and what that process has been. You know, that'll rule out sort of 4 or 5 quite quickly, and then he'll make a decision based on that. But, you know, that's the added bit, isn't it? You can throw as much money as you want to candidates at the moment. We're seeing the, you know, market's seeing that turn down because they need somewhere they feel they can belong, which is a big difference, I think, now post-COVID.
Yeah, fantastic. Another topic that's really hot at the moment, you know, has been for some time, but certainly in the last year or two, more and more businesses have been, you know, hiring a dedicated person to look after this within their business and putting proper strategies in place. Is diversity, D&I. I know certainly we as a business, I think it was at some point last year, we appointed a D&I advocate. And we've been doing a lot more around it as well. What do you have any advice or thoughts on D&I? Whether it's internally, externally?
I think the last year has certainly put everyone back under the microscope a little bit in terms of what they're doing. I think we can all have probably fallen into a trap where D&I probably for the last 2 years has been part of something, but maybe, you know, side of the desk for a lot of organizations, and really there was probably a little lip service played in a lot of areas. And I think, you know, we'll hold our hands up and say we're pretty much rewriting and starting from scratch with our diversity, inclusion and belonging strategy. So we've developed a new policy this year, we're developing a new strategy. We do have someone dedicated in the business that looks at this now. We had that split under probably 2 or 3 different roles, each having portions. And actually we realise that needs to come from a central point of view. But what we're also looking to do is to drive that accountability throughout the organisation and senior leadership team as well. You know, we're not going to be the poster child for it currently. You know, I think we've got a lot of work to do on it. But, you know, I think I've been really impressed with the way the business has responded to everything. You know, I think as a society, we're probably more segregated and separate than we have been for a long, long time. There's a lot of keyboard warriors out there. There's a lot of hate going around, and, you know, we're not seeing that mix of characters and backgrounds that we normally do. You don't have people in office starting to form those sort of bonds. So we've really got to work at it. So we're really launching our communities. So whether that's women in business, women in leadership roles, where it's Prism, which is our LGBTQ community as well. we're really putting a lot of focus into that, because we want somewhere where you can bring your whole self to work. You spend so much time there, you should be able to be yourself and feel that you belong. So I think we're trying to use belonging more than inclusion. I think when you use the word inclusion, it almost forces the fact that they don't feel that they're included already. So we're just trying to do some more diversity and belonging. But we've got a lot of work to do on that. And part of that, sits with me. We've got to look at the way that we look to recruit, the processes that we use, the language that we look to do, the commitment that we have as a business in terms of hiring the right type of individuals at the right levels, look at increasing our actions on decreasing our gender pay gap, all of that, returners, helping youth unemployment. There's so much to go at.
There's so
I think
much, isn't there? You could just,
there is, I think,
like you say, it's a full-time role, isn't it? It's
absolutely. And I think, I suppose I'm probably not in a position to be able to give too much advice on it, because we're right at the start of our journey. But I think from what I've learned so far is you've got to find 2 or 3 things to really go at to make a difference, rather than trying to tackle too much. There is so much on offer that actually pick 2 or 3 things and really kind of nail them and drive that accountability. So we're seeing that more and more in the business. It's becoming really hot on people's lips. They're including it. It's becoming part of their natural language. We're making that transition, which is great to see, but that'll be a journey for us. Forever. Really.
Yeah, that's it. I think it needs to be a part of everyone's journey and an ongoing journey, isn't it? It's not something
absolutely
that you implement once and it's done and it's there. I think it's something that needs to be worked really, really hard on a continuous
you need that
basis.
collective. You need that collective action, because only that way is it going to make a difference in the market. It's all very well some businesses doing it fantastically well, but if you've got others that pay no attention to it or actually actively work against it, that's never going to achieve what we need to do in society. So everyone has a collective responsibility in every role they have to push that, in my opinion, and hold other people accountable and be brave. Put your hand up if you don't like the way people behave in the language they use, and challenge them on it. That's the only way we're going to get better.
Speak up, speak out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic. What top 3 things do you think you have in terms of skills, experience that have made you successful today?
Well, that's a good question. So I think I'm quite fortunate. I can build relationships quite easily with individuals and people. That's always come quite naturally for me. So from starting right through an agency and developing my client portfolio and the candidates there, all the way through to working in-house, which is a very different beast. Building those relationships with hiring managers and stakeholders to be able to get things done or to challenge the status quo, that's always been a necessity for me. So I'm fairly fortunate I've not had to work on it too much as a skill. That's come quite naturally. I think I always want to be involved in something. Maybe that's sometimes to my detriment. Sometimes I can be a bit like, that looks good. I want to be involved in that.
That's why you work in 18, 19-hour days.
That's it. I think it's just this. I think probably for me, I just want to be involved to make a difference. And sometimes I need to take a step back and go, right, actually, I can do more by doing less sometimes. But I think being able to multitask, keep multiple plates spinning at any one time is definitely a key quality that you need to have. And for me, the next thing I like is honesty. I'm really honest in my approach with people. How you treat others is how I would expect to be treated, and that works. That's worked well for me throughout my career. It's not something I'm going to change. I'm not going to please everyone about it. I'm quite comfortable in myself with that. But I wouldn't change that. And I think that's probably a trait that a lot of recruiters can look at. Don't undervalue honesty with candidates and hiring managers. It may be cause you some initial setbacks in certain situations, but it goes an awful long way to making a difference.
100%.
Very difficult to not try and sound too arrogant in that sort of question.
I know, it's always difficult answering questions about yourself, isn't it? What would you say what's the and who from have you, like, what's the one thing that you've learned throughout your career that you always kind of it could be from one particular person or a book or something you've just read online that you kind of always relate back to, and if you're going through maybe a difficult time or a challenging time, and that kind of gets you back in check, that you think? others would?
It's probably been 2 or 3, and one of them's not even work related, but one.
I'll take 2 or 3.
Well, I'll do one that's non-work related and one work related. I think the interesting one to start with is, I think there's a lot of advice that gets banded around in the industry or in life, and someone said to me once, take as much advice as you want and then do what's right for you, which I thought was really interesting. He said everyone can advise when you know what you're going to do, and if you're confident, do it. And that leads nicely on to the next one, which is, and it's probably something I wish I had received earlier in my career and not been as afraid to do, which is fail. Don't be afraid to fail. And actually, failure is brilliant. It's where you learn the most. It's where you can challenge. It's where you can actually, make a difference in terms of highlighting what you can change. I think for me, at the start of my career, I was always a bit afraid to fail. You don't like to fail. There's a negative connotation with it, but actually it's a massive positive thing. If you're failing, you're trying. Absolutely.
And it's how you come back from it and learn from that failure, isn't it? 100%. We all fail. We're all human, and we all fail. It's about open and honest, and
that's key. I'd have loved that sort of 5-6 years ago in my career if someone had just said to me, I don't care if you fail often. Fail spectacularly.
Was it someone that said that to you?
Yeah, do you know, actually it's someone that I work with currently in Hitachi Capital. It's my manager at the moment. So Craig is really good around coaching and mentoring and advice he gives. I don't think I've worked with someone that's made me question kind of my actions and the way I can make an impact before. He's fantastic at that, and he's saying fail, do things, change things all the time, iterative changes, don't go for perfection. Perfection is the enemy of progress for a lot of stuff, isn't it? That's the quote. And actually I'd like to see you failing, because it means you're trying, it means you're doing this, it means you're pushing the envelope on stuff. And for me, I look back at my career and I think there's definitely times where I should have gone, if I just put my head above the parapet, if I just tried something, it may not have worked, but what an impact it could have had. And I probably took the safe option a couple of times. So I suppose if anyone's going to take anything from this today, fail often, fail spectacularly, but do it. That's the best thing you can do.
Fantastic, brilliant. One last question. Is there anyone that you would give a shout out to? So you were, I think, Sean gave you a shout out.
Sean nominated me.
That you highly rate, and why you highly rate them, but also I'll take any nominations for the next vlog.
Would you? Okay. So I was having a look through, and I think you've seen or have been nominated for a few that I would say, but I think I'd echo what Sean said. Clive, Sky Bet and Gaming would be really good. He's someone I follow quite closely in the market. We do a lot of networking events and so on together, but he's constantly trying to trial new initiatives, and the way that he and his team work, I think is really interesting.
What you said about him taking that day off, and
do you know what he's done?
See all his team.
He's done some really good stuff.
That's great.
I think he'd be really interesting. He's trialed different ways of recruiting. I mean, he'll tell us different ways of recruiting for tech that worked well, and he's someone that I really respect in the industry. I think he'd be good for you to speak to. I think I'd get Sarah Speechley on from MPS as well. I think
that's a good shout.
For you to speak to. And Yorkie, Richard St George York, who's at AppCheck as well. He was at Emerald Publishing previously. He'd be good. He actually interviewed me for my first role in recruitment.
Oh, did he?
Years and years ago. But he started me headhunting and then moved in house 2 years ago. He's someone I'd look at. He's been doing a lot around removing candidate details and bias and so on from their hiring process previously. I think he'd be quite interesting to have a look at as well. And then probably a bit of left field, you guys from tech, but Oliver Beckett, who's at Stowe Family Law. They've been doing a lot of really good stuff on candidate on employee well-being and flexibility support. Really good stuff I've been seeing from them. So a few names for you to go at. If Sean hadn't nominated me, I'll be saying him as well.
Yeah, it'd be
Thank
good
you,
to
Sean.
get someone on. Be good to get someone on board that's to focus more around the whole like people side and well-being,
Yeah,
and because again, that's a big thing as well, isn't it? Like, I don't know
yeah,
about you, but
absolutely.
I think everyone's really struggled with this last lockdown more
Yeah,
so than ever. And
yeah,
particularly February.
absolutely.
Funny enough, February's been harder for everyone that I'm speaking to. February seems to have been so much harder than January.
Yeah, the weather's not been great. We feel like we've been in this kind of Groundhog Day for months now. I think,
Yeah,
fingers
that's the worst thing,
crossed
isn't
the weather's
it?
getting
Good old
better.
bloody Groundhog Day.
I know it is. It's crazy. I forget what day of the week it is and what week we're in, but
I know,
no,
yeah.
it's been interesting. Fingers crossed there's a light at the end of the tunnel now, though, which
Yeah,
is good.
yeah, definitely. It's good to have the roadmap in place and things to aim for, isn't it? So,
Absolutely.
fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on
No, thanks
the
for having me.
blog. Really enjoyed talking to you. Found out a few things that I didn't know about you, which is always
I did.
great, given we've known each other for quite a few years now, and I'm sure all the
Indeed.
listeners will have some, gain some value from this. There's been a few things
I
that
hope so.
we've talked about that I think is definitely good food for thought. If anyone wants to reach out to you directly for any advice, questions, or even opportunities,
Yep.
what's the best form of contact?
LinkedIn's probably the best one
Okay.
for me. So very active on there through Hitachi and other networking groups that I'm part of and running. So reach out to me there, you're guaranteed to get a response from that way.
And all your events and things like that will all be on LinkedIn as well, won't they?
Yeah, all our events will be on there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we help run along with Sean a internal recruitment networking group across the north. So we look to, before COVID, we looked to run an event every sort of month, but that was networking drinks, lightning talks, panels. We
So
slowed
that's
that down
called,
because everyone's
that's DBR, isn't
DBR.
it? If anyone's
Yeah, it's
interested in joining that, it's
yeah,
DBR.
we recently got first place in Indeed's recruitment discussion
Oh wow,
groups to join.
amazing.
Yeah, so about 6,000 members of us worldwide now.
Yeah.
Really active. It's a great place for people to go and find some advice and some support and connect with industry peers. So if anyone wants some information on that, please feel reach out to me or Sean directly as well.
Just to let everyone know, that's internal recruiters only, no agencies.
It is internal recruiters only. It's a very safe space for internal recruiters, and we share all our trials and tribulations, good and bad, and information about agencies and candidates and so on as well. So it's a real opportunity. But yeah, anyone wants to reach out about that as well, please feel free. And anything about Hitachi Capital, likewise, just drop me a message and I'll arrange time to speak to you.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much and enjoy the rest
No worries.
of the
Thank you very much.
day. See you later. Bye.
Bye.